Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, everybody. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hello to everybody joining us remotely out there. My name is Daniel Oppenheimer. As Wendy said, I'm the Land Program Director at the Hill Country Alliance, and I coordinate a partnership called the Camp Bullis Sentinel Landscape. How many folks have ever heard of the Hill Country Alliance? Got a couple of hands. That's wonderful. We are a regional nonprofit organization. We work throughout the Central Texas Hill Country to conserve the things that make it the beautiful place we all know and love. We work on issues specifically related to land, water, night skies, and communities. The bulk of our work is done through outreach and education, as well as being a regional convener of our partners to enhance coordination and collaboration and ultimately scale up our impacts across those 4 program areas. Again, land, water, night skies, and communities. We've just got a new hire. We brought on Marisa, who's our water program manager, and she's already gotten to connect with a number of the GCDs. She'll be tabling outside, and hope you get to meet her if you haven't yet. All right, so I expect to see fewer hands on this next question. Who's ever heard of a Sentinel landscape? What? That's too many hands. I was expecting less. The reason most of us in this room have not heard of a Sentinel landscape is twofold. One, it's a relatively new program. It was created in 2013 by the U.S. Departments of Defense, Agriculture, and Interior. And it's based on this recognition that to strengthen our military readiness and support a lot of our installations, we need to be thinking about where and how we can conserve natural resources and some of the compatible land uses around those bases and installations. So to give a very applicable example, Joint Base San Antonio Camp Bullis, which is just north of us here, relies on, any guesses as to where they get their drinking water from? Not a trick question. Yes, ma'am. They actually get it from the Trinity, but yes, from the groundwater. And so when we're talking about how do we manage and protect our groundwater, what we're really talking about here is it's not just for our rural constituents, our urban constituents, but really, in this case, sustainably managing our groundwater resources is really a concern of military readiness and national security. And so, again, this is a relatively new program created in 2013, and projects have to go through a formal proposal through a federal coordinating committee. And if you are recognized as a Sentinel landscape, really there are 3 big wins that come with that recognition. The first is that you are given several years of funding to support a partnership coordinator to convene, in our case now, over 50 partners to think about how we can work across a vast landscape to conserve natural resources, including groundwater, in a way that benefits those communities as well as the military installation, which in our case is Joint Base San Antonio Camp Bullis. The second benefit is that though we still have to chase after big pots of funding to support our goals, we now have priority consideration when going after funding from those 3 departments, again, Defense, Agriculture, and Interior. And the third big win that comes from being recognized as a Sentinel landscape is that we can match federal dollars with federal dollars. And for anyone who's had to chase after money, there's typically a match requirement, and usually you're never allowed to match federal with federal. So these are 3 compelling reasons that we went after this special status. And just this February, we became the first Sentinel landscape in the entire state of Texas and only the 10th in the entire country. How many folks have ever heard of Joint Base San Antonio's Camp Bullis? That's a lot of hands. Joint Base San Antonio, been around for almost 120 years. Again, just north of us, about 25, 30 minutes. It's a 28,000 acre military installation. They work with over 260 partners on a variety of training missions, including training every single military medic across all the branches of service. And I don't know if you noticed on the first image, but those 28,000 acres straddle, as we said earlier, the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone, as well as the Trinity Aquifer. It straddles both. And so again, there's this real concern about water because the military installation, just like the rest of us, needs it for drinking water and other uses. So how are we doing the work? Well, in 2020, the Alamo Area Council of Governments started to bring together partners, including the Hill Country Alliance and Texas A&M's Natural Resources Institute, to think about how do we address some of the regional challenges that are impeding the training mission at Camp Bullis. Challenges such as light pollution that comes with a lot of development. Light pollution can impede some of the nighttime training at Camp Bullis. And of course, with all the development emanating from San Antonio and Austin and the I-35 corridor, that's countless more straws going into the aquifer that Camp Bullis and those surrounding communities depend on. And so with that growth also comes a lot of impervious cover. Flash floods have killed several personnel on base. And so there's a lot of natural resource issues that are impacting military training at Camp Bullis. So our challenge and our opportunity is to bring together partners in a way that we can work together to address some of those large-scale regional challenges. And the way that we've done that is through the creation of 7 technical committees. I'm only going to focus on a couple of them, though in the Q&A afterwards, if we want to go back to any of these, we can certainly do so. So again, we've got 7, and the 2 that I'm going to touch on that are most relevant for today in groundwater. The first is the Watershed Protection Committee. Anybody here from Edwards Aquifer Authority? All right. So the EAA chairs our Watershed Protection Committee. This includes partners from the Cow Creek GCD, the local Trinity Glenrose GCD, a number of folks in the world of groundwater. And they went through a process that, given our shared goals and values, what are the priority needs and challenges and opportunities. And ultimately, the Watershed Protection Committee established 3 focus areas to guide their work in the coming years. The first is to seek funding. Again, we've now got that priority consideration to go after those big pots of federal funding. So the first focus is to find new pots of money that will bolster the City of San Antonio's Edwards Aquifer Protection Program. And if folks want to ask questions later, I can get into the alphabet soup of what some of those grants are and how we're trying to match them. The second focus area is to bring together our GCD partners to conduct an inventory across this multi-county focus area to inventory and ultimately prioritize and plug abandoned wells that pose some of the greatest risk of groundwater contamination. And the third focus area is to train local fire departments across the project area on some of the best management practices for especially those materials that you can use to put out fires over the recharge zone that won't impact water quality. The other committee that I'll mention, also highlighted in blue, number 3, the Soil Health and Infiltration Committee. This is a committee that is focused on continuing or initiating soil research to inform land stewardship and low-impact development, which has a number of benefits, including groundwater replenishment. Anybody doing the tour at the Edwards Aquifer Authority? I see a couple of hands, great. Well, they just established a field research park in the past, I guess, year and a half. And at this field research park, they've implemented a number of land stewardship practices, things like berms and swales on contour. And not only have they implemented these practices, but they're looking at evaporation. They're looking at changes in soil biology and infiltration to really assess how effective these various stewardship practices are at enhancing groundwater. So that's a major focus, is again supporting that research, and ultimately that'll inform some of the practices that we support. In a lot of this work, we're not focused on management at Camp Bullis, but again, this huge focal area surrounding the base. How do we provide volunteering private landowners with the technical and financial resources that align with the landowner's goals, and also support the base, whether that's by mitigating flooding, supporting groundwater replenishment, and so forth. I think I'll go from there. So again, we started conversations, building this partnership really at the beginning of COVID in 2020. And since then, we've really built this partnership online, Microsoft Teams meetings and Zoom meetings and all sorts of online meetings. And we've put together a remarkably diverse and robust partnership of now over 50 partners. It's local, state, and federal agencies. It's nonprofits. It's folks from the private sector. And you might say, well, why the heck are folks from the private sector getting involved in this? Well, Joint Base San Antonio contributes approximately $40 billion to the state economy every year. And so this partnership, we're looking at military readiness, natural resources conservation, agricultural productivity, has really generated a lot of interest from a variety of folks. And again, our challenge and opportunity is how do we organize through those committees towards some of those shared goals. I'll mention a few partners who may or may not be in the room, probably at the conference. This includes the Edwards Aquifer Authority, Trinity Glen Rose Groundwater Conservation District, Cow Creek Groundwater Conservation District, Bandera County River Authority and Groundwater Conservation District, the National Cave and Karst Research Institute, the USGS, and Texas State University's Meadows Center for Water and the Environment. And so with that priority consideration for funds from the DoD, Department of Ag and Interior, we have been chasing after funds left and right. And already, even though we just got our recognition in February, we've had some early successes. I'm going to try to avoid the acronyms, but through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, just a couple of weeks ago, we secured $8.57 million through what's called the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. And this is going to support volunteering private landowners to enhance soil and land health towards their own goals, but in a way that, again, helps enhance that groundwater replenishment and infiltration. Also, a bit of those funds can support things like conservation easements over important recharge features. And then we just got invited to submit a full proposal through the Department of Defense. REPI stands for Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration. Looking at, again, ways that we can leverage things like the City of San Antonio's Edwards Aquifer Protection Program, as well as partner with volunteering landowners to develop natural infrastructure projects to mitigate inland flooding, enhance groundwater replenishment, soil moisture, plant production, and so forth. This is a neat picture of the Edwards Aquifer Authority's Field Research Park. Again, I referenced this is one strategy. This is the berm and swale on contour. There are a whole bunch of different structures they have at the park and that we and our partners have implemented across the hill country. The structures look very different from one another and may have different site-specific objectives, but they all provide a variety of co-benefits. So wanted to keep it pretty short and sweet. That is my contact information there. If you're having trouble reading it, in the back.